Hello everybody, it's the 3rd of January 2022, and even though it's the middle of winter, I still have things I want to do with my trees. And if you've been around my channel for a little while, you'll know I've got a lot of trees I'm looking to repot come March, but I also have trees now that I want to work on now, so that I'm not having to bother with any sort of trimming and things for them. At the same time, I'm trying to get all the repotting done. Not always the best time of year if you're in a particularly cold climate to do too much trimming. Sometimes it's better to leave some of this long growth on to protect from a bit of dieback from frost, etc. But in my part of the world, I can usually get away with it. I say usually. That might come back and bite me, but there you go. I'm going to be looking at these root over rock fusion projects that I've been working on for a couple of years now, and do a little bit of preparation work with them, set them up for next spring. As always, the drink can is there for scale only, not for decoration. Let's move that out of the way. This, someone pointed out to me that this looks a little bit like a foot sticking out of a shoe, and I can't unsee that now. So yeah, think of it as the shoe project. I have a number of trees, 1, 2,
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13,
15 I think it is, unless I've counted one twice. Little ash trees that I've grown from seed, and then we've gradually been using all kinds of grafting tape and pieces of wire to try and get them to hug onto this rock and then fuse at this point. So far I'm beginning to get a little bit of fusion, and ash I find fuse as well as any tree, if not better than most. Which is the front, I'm not entirely sure. But we have a really good piece of fusion here. We've got 2 or 3 trees all proper fused together, so that's good. As you may have noticed, Father Christmas wasn't listening about getting me a new turntable. The old one is fully seized now, so I'm going to have to do something about that in the next couple of weeks. But I have a plan, and I have some bits on order, so hopefully I'll have a decent functioning turntable within a couple of weeks. I've got some growths here that are growing straight up that I want to do something with. I think I'm going to lose a couple of these thicker ones, so I'm just going to take that right back. I'm going to take this one right back. But this really thin piece here is very flexible, so I'm going to do as I've done with the other pieces. I'm going to try and tuck it under the wire like a needle, like a thread through a needle. Ash is so easy to get hold of. I know there's a problem with ash dieback at the moment, but I think if there's a way to save them, it's going to be the way that they grow so easily from seed, and with such variability that sooner or later hopefully there will be ash trees in the hedgerows, etc., that have a resistance to the ash dieback. That's my hope. Okay, so that's kind of tidied up those rootlets a little. I'm going to chop back some of these and leave others, and then wire it up. I'm going to leave these really thin pieces, and I'm going to chop out this big piece at the back to a good sized bud just there. like so, and chop back some of these thicker pieces. I'm going to cut that one back to there. And what I'm kind of trying is to have different trunks at different heights, so that once I wire it all together, I'll have one leader, and the tree will have a bit of taper with the different levels of trunk, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. So let's find some wire and put some wire on this. I'm leaning towards this being my front, as it has a slightly more interesting roots and a slightly more interesting shape of rock, but that can always change. We'll leave that existing piece of wire as is. It's being subsumed by the trees as they grow, which some people worry about, but I'm just going to leave it and try not to worry about it too much. I'm going to trim off this excess portion. Need to put some WD-40 on my wire cutters. They're a little stiff. Okay, so just going to tighten this up, pull these trunks in nice and tight together, so that as they grow they will fuse into one glorious trunk. Okay, so that's that. Another piece slightly higher. There we go, that's beginning to give some taper. It's very straight. I'm wondering whether I could put a bend in it. I think I do need to do something. Okay, so some large gauge wire, and let's just try and put a little bit of movement into this trunks. Yeah, that's better. I could then bring these pieces up, maybe. First of all, I'm going to put a small piece of wire around these that I want to fuse. That'll do nicely. Let's cut off these excess pieces. Okay, so it does look like it's in some kind of hell, but yeah, definitely better for that curve. I might even put a piece of guy wire just to further support that. I'll keep looking at it over the next few weeks and make a decision. For now, kind of liking that, and then if I can get some buds to pop, I might even chop that once it's fused, to bring it back more into line. We shall see. Okay, a little bit of extra wire on there. That's much better. Got some better movement in it. I still might. Yeah. As I say, I'll leave it a couple of weeks and then decide whether I want to pull that down more or no. Next one in this little group is this big chunk of rock in this basic flower pot, and I am going to repot this into a seed tray to give it a bigger root run, and I'll be doing that in the spring. Same deal with this. I want to pull these up tight, but I'm not going to do yeah, I'm just going to put a piece of wire around that, and then in spring, as I say, this is completely full of roots. You can see where they're pushing outwards on the pot, so it needs to be chopped back and get it into a flatter pot. So let's find a piece of wire and we'll just pull this up together. I think this one has some, or this group has some better potential than some of my other root over rock projects, because they're trees I've grown from seed, and therefore they were much smaller, thinner, flexible, and hugging onto this rock much better than when I've started it with older trees. So I actually feel like I'm getting somewhere more with these ones, or at least getting there a bit faster perhaps. Okay, just tighten that off. Use the pliers to do that with, not the cutters. It works better. There we go. Okay, and then I'm just going to shorten a couple of those pieces back to a bud. Again, by doing so, I hope to have slightly different levels, and that allows me to have a bit of taper kind of built in. Again, this is quite straight, but I don't mind that so much on this one, because we've got quite a depth of rock, quite a depth of root. So and once we have a nice fused trunk with the nice fused roots, it can always be given a hard chop and regrow the top if needs be. You know, once I have this part fully fused, that is. Chop off the excess. Done. Okay. That's better. And hopefully, as you can see, we're beginning to seep these down onto the rock now. There is still a little bit of a gap, but not a huge one. The last one, and this isn't over a rock, this is over a chunk of polystyrene which I roughly cut into a vaguely sort of pyramidal shape. Clean out all these leaves, and I put a few trees around it, and then added more last year to give me a more radial root flare. And they, for the most part, seem to have survived. And so, all I'm going to do with this is try and gather it all in together as best I can, like so. and hopefully I will get a nice fat trunk out of this eventually. Piece of wire long enough to go around that is needed. Okay, this is one of those jobs you need a third handful almost. If I can just gather up the most of them. There are a few that are too short. Some of these last year's seedlings are too short, but I can gather them in with some grafting tape if I have any left, which I'm not entirely sure. Okay, so that's kind of hooked on. So that's just a question of pulling this as tight as I can without breaking the wire. Into a nice tight bundle. That's definitely going to give me an interesting trunk if I can get all these pieces to fuse. There we go. Okay, cut off that excess. These trees have got nowhere to grow, pardon the pun, so they're going to have to stay put where they are really, and that means they say should, all fuse together. As again, the drinks can for scale, if I light it sideways you can see it's going to be quite a big root base. I'm going to try and put this into a larger pot because I think, well, fairly certain, yeah, this seed tray is completely filled with root. I can just pull that and show you, completely filled with root. So a large training pot, or a larger training pot, is the order of the day. I can see we have a little bit of dieback just there. I will snip that off. Quick 360 for you. This piece is kind of gotta go. I'm going to wrap a second piece of wire. At this point I'm going to leave this piece hanging out. It may become a branch, or it may just get cut back flush once fusion occurs. So I've got a bit of taper going on. As I say, some of these need to be tied in a bit more. But we will worry about that come spring, when I know what's growing well and what isn't. Okay, I think this will be my front, and I'm just going to snip back a few of these just to bring it down a little. Picking buds that are on the outside. As I say, by having all these at different heights, that will help the taper. That leaves this one as my leader. Okay, there we go. The camera shy collie just flew past because there's a pigeon roosting, making a bit of a racket back there, and he had to go and investigate. So that's it. I put another couple of pieces of wire It's starting to resemble some kind of traffic cone maybe, but there you go. I do seem to have run out of grafting tape, so I shall have to get some more, and I will wrap the base probably in the spring, so I don't want it to sit wet any more than it has to, and we will see how that goes. Just to show you what I did earlier, I've been doing for a longer period of time. This was 5 ash trunks over a rock, wired in this point. The wire is still in that section of the trunk. The tree has completely subsumed it now, so there's no obvious evidence of it ever having been there really. There's a couple of little scars here and there, but I can understand why people might be concerned about the wire scars, but they do disappear, and there's the living proof. So there you have it. That's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. It is much appreciated. Do the YouTube, like, comment, share, all that jazz. But most of all, please, 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 take care of yourselves.
Stay safe.